So welcome everyone to our monthly product update with LeanLaw. I am Fred Willerup. I'm the CTO at LeanLaw, responsible for the product development here and making it run for you. Chase is our customer experience lead and joining me. And the theme today is going to be invoice presentation, which is kind of boils down to making your invoices look good. And we're going to start by Chase going through how you do that, different options in both QuickBooks and LeanLaw. And then at the end, or after that, I'm going to be talking about custom fields specifically, both in QuickBooks in general, but also some new exciting stuff we have coming specifically for QuickBooks Advanced. So that's kind of the agenda today. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box, or where do we ask questions, Chase? I forgot exactly where that takes place.
I'm muted. That doesn't work very well. You can ask questions directly in the chat, or there's a specific Q&A box you can ask as well.
Right. So go ahead and do that. Also, I'm going to ask at the end for ideas and suggestions for what you would like to hear next time. Where we want these to be useful for you. So give us feedback either during this or afterwards in terms of whether this is useful and what you'd like to cover next time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chase for some invoice presentation goodness.
Oh boy. All right. I thought you were going to talk longer, but I guess I can cover my stuff. Let's get a screen share open. There we go. And move those. And that way I can look at Fred the entire time I'm talking. Perfect. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen now. Perfect. Thanks, Linda. All right. So invoice presentation, the way your invoices look when you send them out to clients. Obviously, that's really important. It's the way that you present yourself to your client and the way that they see how their work has been done. It's essential for getting paid, which is kind of why we're here, right? All in pursuit of tracking our work and getting paid. So let's do a little background here. Talk about why we do what we do and how that affects what we're going to be talking about later. So we started with LeanLaw. We originally wanted to do, we have this idea of a best in breed, or picking existing softwares that do an excellent job at what they do and bringing that into our ecosystem instead of trying to reinvent doing what they do. And QuickBooks is a huge part of that, right? They allow us to do essential things like accounting or delivering invoices or dealing with payments, all very, very important things in the way a firm functions. So we've kind of piggybacked on the things that QuickBooks does to take advantage of the things that they do well. Like I said, invoice delivery, we now have the option to do that in-app. Payment processing, we've just launched our integration with Gravity Legal, which meshes nicely with QuickBooks and LeanLaw. And then, of course, the accounting part, which is kind of another big reason that a lot of us are here today. Once something becomes AR, it goes into QuickBooks and stays in sync with LeanLaw. So we're not having to keep two totally separate systems connected. They are always communicating back and forth. That means sometimes we have to do a little bit of legwork to make sure things are where we need them, or a little bit of setup there, but that's where we're at. Now, with the great things that QuickBooks does for us and allows us to do, there's also some downsides that QuickBooks comes with. Big one is that QuickBooks isn't designed for law firms. So there's a lot of nuance that QuickBooks loses when you compare it to an all-in-one platform that is specifically law focused, right? We're all familiar with how difficult trust accounting is in QuickBooks normally, or in our case here, we're talking about the invoice presentation. There's lots of quirks that Intuit has not picked up on in QuickBooks that we would like to see specific for law. So we're kind of at the mercy of what QuickBooks decides we can and can't do specific to invoice presentation. In fact, there was a firm a number of years ago, one of our users that we were going through the invoice presentation process, and I was talking through, here's what we can do. This is what it looks like. And his first comment was, this looks like an invoice I would receive from a plumber. I don't want to send that to my client, which I don't think anyone wants to send the wrong message with their invoices and the way they look. And so we've taken a number of steps and also worked with QuickBooks to try and come up with a better solution than what they give out of the box. Fred has put in a ton of time and work into making things law focused, which is very, very, very much appreciated. So that's kind of backstory of why we find ourselves here and what we're kind of dealing with. Fred, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you're now going to show how we can make invoices work for law firms and not plumbing firms, it sounds like.
Yep. Yeah, this is not lean plumbers. Yeah. Not what we do. So let's start with what we get out of LeanLaw to start with. So we've tracked our time, we've turned it into a draft invoice. That's kind of the first step in the invoice presentation process. So we're over here actually in my personal LeanLaw test account. So if you find any Easter eggs here, keep those in mind. Open up drafts, and I've actually got one here as an example. Okay, so let's talk about these. It looks like Karen's got some tea for us in the chat. Yep, hopefully they will start paying attention, especially with advanced, and take note of the things we've been asking for. Some of us longer than others, apparently, my goodness, 20 years. So draft invoice in LeanLaw, pretty basic. The purpose of the draft invoice is threefold, really. It's to edit and make changes. It's to run pre-billing if the firm does that. So you can print it off, give it to the attorneys, collect their feedback, and then go back into LeanLaw and change those, whether you print it off or do that digitally. And then the approval process that comes along with that. So these draft invoices can be printed, they can be edited or messed with, and we actually have the ability to export the leads version of this as well, if the firm does that. Now, obviously, leads, you need to submit the final version. That's not going to work as a draft, but that's there. And this really, even though you can print this off, and it looks all right the way it is, but when you print it off, it's really not something you'd want to send to the client. It's pretty dry. It's not formatted well. Fred has definitely done his best to make that look great, but it's really not meant to be a client-facing piece of documentation. And so even though that's an option, we do want to take that to the next step and ultimately send that to QuickBooks. So let's do that actually. And I'm not going to bump this one over because we've got examples for that. But the place we do that and make those changes and make it look nice, really give it that makeover of what you'd want to show the client, we do using the custom form styles in QuickBooks. So let's jump over and take a look at those. Here we are in QuickBooks. And I've just come up here to settings and then my custom form styles. And I'm just taking a look at the default one. You can make as many of these as you want. But the one that LeanLaw uses is the default, or will be whichever one you've defaulted. So while you can't set different forms for different clients, you can have a handful that you can manually switch between, but LeanLaw is only going to pick the default one. So we'll take a look at my default, the one and only standard, the one they give me right out of the box. And let's kind of unpack what we're looking at here and see what they've got for us. Something else I want to note here is everything we're talking about here specific to invoice presentation really only has to be done once during the firm's initial setup. So there's a lot to kind of unpack here and take a look at, especially when we go back to LeanLaw. But know that once you get it and you get it right, that's the last time you really have to mess with it. You don't have to come in here and mess with it constantly. Once it's set, you're good to go. All right, so we're in the form. Let's take it step by step through the different tabs up top here and see what they have for us. So, and I'm actually going to go through some of the most common things that I cover when onboarding or bringing a firm into LeanLaw or QuickBooks for the first time. Just a couple of, hey, some best practices or suggestions on things that a lot of our firms like to do. First of which, obviously, going to be a logo. So I've got a nice little flower here, just as an example. But you'd go on the design page, you'd get that logo updated, and then change the template. So taking that from something a plumber might send you to something the law firm feels is more appropriate. A couple examples here. And unfortunately, QuickBooks is pretty limited on the design templates they give us. It would be awesome if we could see more of those or a little bit more flexibility in changing the way these look, but they're pretty set for right now. So, and then the last thing here is the color. I've given it green. That's kind of the MO around here, as you can probably tell. But I'm actually going to flip that back to fresh. Okay, great. So the next tab over is content. And then when we click on content, it gives us the different sections or layers of that invoice we can go in and make specific changes to. So let's start with the top. So we've got our header, which QuickBooks is going to fill for us automatically, and that's pretty easy. It's got a couple of different form names for us, and then a couple different particulars at the bottom. And we'll actually come back to this because there's some interesting things LeanLaw will do for us up top here. So that's the top section. Let's go to the middle layer here. There we go. Okay, so a couple of really important things here I almost always suggest a firm has. The first of which is the account summary, having that enabled. So that's a quick balance update for your client, how much they previously owed, how much was paid previously, kind of where they stand with the firm. That way you don't have to send another statement later of, where they're at, why their balance is higher in total versus what's on the invoice. Definitely suggest getting this one enabled. Okay, another one here is changing quantity to hours. Like I said, QuickBooks is set up for not law firms right out of the box. So we'd want to change quantity, go ahead and change edit labels, change quantity to something more appropriate like hours, or actually just disregard it at all if we don't want to. One of the cool things QuickBooks lets us do is enable or disable all of these different columns. So I've seen firms that will get rid of the date column, for example, or perhaps the quantity and rate column. They only want to show the description and the total amount, and that's totally okay. Change that to hours, great. And then a couple of options down at the bottom. A couple extra details there if you want to unpack those and take a look. Not anything super important there. And then the last tab is emails. Looks like we've got, Karen's got a question for us. If you have set quantity to hours, does that also show above the expense section? I don't recall. Fred, do you know the answer to that?
I'm not sure, actually. So we'll have to get back to you on that. Sorry. On this page, I wanted to add one thing, which is that we almost always have to adjust the width of the columns. The hours, the law firms tend to have very long descriptions of what's called showing up as activity here. And we want to maximize the width of the description column and minimize the width of all the other columns. So
yeah, you can do that with the handy sliders here. So if we did not have a rate or quantity, that gives us more space to increase that description.
And you want to turn off the product and service almost always. There you go.
Right. Because we're really only giving one service. There's not a variety. We're not charging for different kinds of paint. There's really just one thing we're doing. Got a question from Darlene. Let's answer that live. Where does the trust statement / summary appear in the invoice? Good question. I'll actually answer that a little bit later. So there's a whole section on that. So we will come back to that question, Darlene. All right. Emails. Let's talk about, actually, nope. Forgot the bottom layer. So if the firm is set up for discounts, we can set that to be displayed on or off. Same with the deposit and the estimate summaries. All right, now on to emails. So if the firm delivers invoices via email, excuse me, this is where you can set some of those defaults. So things like the subject or the body of that email, as well as the greeting. This is where you get to come in and set those expectations so that when you deliver out of QuickBooks or out of LeanLaw, because that's a lot easier, this is what you'll end up sending or where you set those settings. Misty's got a question. Can you have the invoice number displayed on the invoice? Yes. And I don't recall if it does that by default, but there is a way to do that using custom fields, which we'll talk about a little bit.
It does show up by default.
Okay, well, there we go. Oh yeah, of course, it's right up there at the top, that top section there, invoice number. Great. Okay, so that's some of the basics of what QuickBooks offers in their custom form style settings. And again, you can set multiple of these. You can flip things on and off. I totally suggest going in here and checking those out if you haven't already. It plays a huge role in the way that clients see and understand the firm, and you want to make sure you come across in the most professional way possible. So fingers crossed, QuickBooks will give us more options to change the template here, but that's where we stand today. All right. So I think that's just about it for things we can do in QuickBooks until a little bit later. Yep. Okay, now for some of the fun law-specific things Fred has added for us. So we're back in LeanLaw, and we're actually going to go to the invoice presentation settings. So for anyone who hasn't checked this out yet, we, over the years, got feedback from different firms on things they wanted to see in QuickBooks, but QuickBooks didn't offer. And so Fred came in and added a lot of those specific structures or changes to fields or columns, and given us the options to do a lot of those things. So let's take a look and kind of unpack what we've got going on here. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom because this is my favorite. I get asked a lot of questions about how dates on invoices are determined, and it's this setting right here. So we've got the option for the last day of the billing period or when the invoice is created. And this is important to understand for anyone running bills. So the invoice dates are generated automatically by LeanLaw, and this is where we can set that expectation of which date it picks. The last day of the billing period is the default, and the one I typically suggest doing. It's the last day of the time period. That's the filter for time you set when creating invoices. So if I ran, for example, let's say September is my time period filter, LeanLaw would automatically pick the last day of September as the date for those invoices. If I was to use the when invoice was created option, that would instead pick the day I created the invoice regardless of the time period. So if I set September as my time period, but had when invoice was created, the date would be October 28th instead of September 31st. And that's an important distinction to make because that has an impact on your revenue reports. Fred, do you want to highlight that a little bit?
Yeah, whichever report we have that shows billed revenue will go off of the date of the invoice. And so you might think, oh, we want the date on there that we created the invoice. You typically actually want the date to be the last of the billing period because that's how you want it to show up in reports.
Yep. And if anyone forgets, there's a little blurb right in that page that describes exactly that. Karen asked, so billed revenue is on an accrual basis? I'm not qualified to answer that one.
No, well, when reported in LeanLaw, it's strictly, so revenue reported in QuickBooks work with whatever QuickBooks does, and you can set it to cash or accrual. When we report it in LeanLaw, we do it on a cash basis. That's probably a bigger question to answer fully, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So we're going to skip past the custom invoice field section and go right to structure. And you'll notice kind of on the right here, there's an example invoice that updates with changes we make on this page. So we don't have to go make a new invoice. Fred's given us an awesome way to see what those changes look like without having to jump back and forth. And I'm going to finish that structure setting. So let's go through these. So the first option here is to add subheaders to invoice sections. This is a cool one. So you can distinguish or delineate between where one type of item begins and ends and then another one begins. So here we've got legal services. Those are our time entries. And we've got non-billables, expenses, and fixed fees. So that easily breaks out what type of item you're seeing throughout the invoice. Flip that one off. Let's take a look at date part of invoice description. There we go. So that gets rid of the need for a date column and just adds that to the time entry or expense description. And then matter in the billing address. So that's one of those header options I mentioned earlier. We can add that in without needing to mess with things in QuickBooks. Got a couple of questions here. So from Mr. Schaffner, how can you make the cutoff for the hours billed being the end of the billing period, but for the purposes of showing what is owed, still take into account payments made between then and the date of billing? Ooh.
Let's think about that one, Chase. I would move on.
Okay.
We're definitely going to answer it, but it's and Chase, I think keep going on the presentation, and then I'll inject with questions so we don't we don't interrupt the flow too much here.
Yep, Sam caught me off guard there. I wasn't ready for that one. Let's go look at summaries here. So we've got timekeeper detail in memo or timekeeper detail in attachment. What does that mean? Timekeeper detail is basically, it's a description of the timekeepers and how much effort or how much work they put in on the invoice. So say I tracked 10 hours on this invoice and Fred tracked 5. If we have that timekeeper detail enabled, it'll show my initials 10 hours, Fred's initials 5 hours. That way, whether for the client's sake or for yours, you'll know you have a total in that memo field showing who worked how much. And then you can add that as part of the memo or as a separate attachment entirely. And we'll actually come back to that one. And then the last section here is the descriptions and items. So starting from the bottom, we've got combined billables and non-billables. And keep an eye on that example on the right. So we had, actually, I'm going to add our headings there. That makes more sense. So we've got our non-billables and our regular billables. When I combine those, they're now part of the same section. So you can include hours in the descriptions. So that's really useful if you pick the option above that, which is combine entries from the same day. So you'll notice we've got 2 on the 20th. If we combine those, we now know how much time we spend on each. We know how that hours column is actually broken up or what that's made of. We've got include matter name in description. That's for time entries. That's useful if you're creating an invoice with lots of matters on it. Including leads codes in the descriptions. Again, if the firm uses leads and they want a visual or PDF version of that leads invoice, that's a great way to convey those specific codes. And then including the username in the descriptions. So if you want the username of the timekeeper that was responsible for those time entries or fees or expenses, that's how you get that set up. And then actually there's a quick shortcut here to the custom form styles settings page in QuickBooks. So if you don't want to go fumble around and look for that, LeanLaw's got a direct link for you. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about on this page is actually related to those summaries. So we got a question earlier about the trust information appearing on an invoice. So let's go take a look at that. Open up my example invoice here in drafts and talk about the memo field. Sweet. So we've got that draft open. I'm going to open memo here. It gives us a couple options. So matter totals, hour summary, and trust balance. Hour summary is that timekeeper detail we talked about a little bit earlier. We see that down here in the bottom. We've got me and the time that I tracked and at the rate that I tracked that. The trust balance information, you'll see that pop up down here at the bottom. And I believe the gal's name was Darlene. I apologize if I forgot. But by default, actually, on any invoice that's associated with a matter that has trust, you'll automatically get that trust balance included. And that basically keeps your client up to date on where their trust account's at, how much was in the account before the transaction, how much is being taken out, what the balance is afterwards. And then if you have Evergreen set up, you'd see that information here as well. So how much they need to pay back in. This is really cool because it means you don't have to send extra statements later or specific to trust. They already see on the invoice and they're up to date on what's happening. You can disable this on invoices that you don't want to be paid out through trust. It's just that LeanLaw assumes if you've got trust for matter, that's probably where you're going to be paying it from. So you can flip that on and off.
There's a couple of questions here about the tax and trust statements, and yes, that's a known issue that the information we put into the trust statement does not include tax on the invoice, and we have on our roadmap to fix this, but unfortunately, it doesn't do that today. So what you have to do if you're in a tax situation like Canada or certain states, you basically have to edit the trust statement to not include the calculations of account balances and the new retainer balance. You essentially have to just include the current trust balance in that memo field, which I believe Chase is going to show how we can edit the default memo contents here, but hopefully that that answers that question.
Yep, so we can take a look at that real quick. And the last thing here is matter totals. So if you've got an invoice with multiple matters on it, you can get something similar to the hours or timekeeper summary, and that shows the totals per matter.
And there's a question about how from Greg Shelton. How can I turn automatic use of trust money off? Well, you can edit the memo field down there. There's no automation currently that applies trust money. That's a manual process. So, but you can edit the default field there, which is what Chase is showing now, to just reflect the more to not reflect the calculation that we have by default here, but just a more simple, hey, here's your trust balance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to show that real quick, like how you edit or were you planning on doing that, Chase?
Yep, that's what I've got up right now. So
okay, great.
We're back in settings, and then actually under the trust account section of settings, you'll notice the invoice trust notice, and there's a little customize button at the bottom. You can go in a whole lot of detail here, but you're able to go in and change what's specifically shown. So if you don't want certain values or you want to change the way things are phrased, you can come in here, make changes, and then that sets the default for the firm. So you only have to set it once. We've actually got the same for Evergreen as well, if the firm is set up for that. So you can go in and change the Evergreen message or the partial payment.
Yeah, and this page looks quite daunting right now. Maybe a good time to highlight that, you know, with all of what we're talking today, we really are here to help out. So click the little green chat button down there and say, hey, I need help setting this up, or I need help with invoice presentation, and we have a lot of experience setting this up for law firms so that it works well. So don't hesitate to reach out if this feels too complicated or annoying. We also have some questions about if you go back to the invoice presentation settings, Chase.
Mm-hmm.
About you know, you showed how you can include matter in the billing address, and there was a note about, hey, I wanted to be showing under the billing address, and there is actually a way to do that with custom fields, and I'm going to show that here after Chase is gone. You can see the custom fields options here, and that provides some more invoice presentation options that we'll get to in just a moment.
Yep. Darlene's got a question. is there a separate trust statement that can be attached to invoices that include trust transactions? So I do know we have the ability to record, or excuse me, to attach the trust statement as a separate item. And that's something you do in the QuickBooks tab of billing. There's an option here for, if I had one, which I don't, normally there would be an option there to attach trust statement. So, and I don't believe that's Fred, is that individual trust transactions on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the bit. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not showing up in this account here.
I don't have all the special features turned on.
There's we do have an option to attach trust statements to invoices, and it'll include all the historic transactions and so on. So that's a great way, maybe in even maybe in place of the memo field, to just add a PDF with the trust transactions. Yeah.
Yep.
Great question.
Real quick, Jan has a question about showing how do you track total hours on a fixed fee for up to the set amount of hours? If so, does it show up on the invoice? I don't believe that shows up on the invoice, but real quick, jump through some hoops here, set up a fixed fee. So you're able to set, when you create a fixed fee, you're able to set an hour limit. So say we only wanted a 10-hour limit. What happens then is anything tracked over 10 hours on that fixed fee then bumps to that hourly rate that we set. But I don't believe it tells you that on the invoice.
Yeah, it'll, if you exceed that amount, we will add a line item on that invoice that says basically, fee for exceeding the, I don't remember what we say exactly, but we add a line item on the invoice if that number is exceeded.
Excellent. And it looks like
there's a question, Chase, on invoice presentation that points out that there tends to not be enough room in the header for long law firm names and addresses. Can we change the width of the and this is really more on the QuickBooks side, the width of the contact information up there on the left side?
I don't think they let us do that. And
Yeah,
maybe some of the QuickBooks gurus
no.
in the chat might have a better answer, but
I think the answer is no, unfortunately, but yeah.
Okay. How to get trust transactions on the statement? How do they set that up? I believe that's something we enable, right, Fred?
Sorry, I was reading a question. Can you repeat that?
Katie asks, how would I set that up in regards to the trust transactions on the statement?
Let's do a follow-up. It should be enabled. I'm wondering if that is currently sort of switched on for individual accounts, and we haven't enabled it for all accounts. I'm going to do a follow-up to this meeting just to make sure that you guys all have it enabled. So let's make that a follow-up to this this meetup.
Okay. And I believe it's the same situation with Canadian taxes, that it's probably not working correctly.
There's also a question of how do you change the due date of the invoice?
Yep, I believe you can set, so in QuickBooks, that's something you set on the invoice individually. Let's see.
Well, there's you set a default in QuickBooks.
Right.
Under your company settings under sales, you can set a default terms, and you can set multiple terms in there that have different due dates and different parameters. And in LeanLaw, you can access that right here where Chase is. Sorry, I'm talking. You're clicking. In LeanLaw, you can override that for individual clients here, or you can do it in QuickBooks too. But essentially, if you click that drop down there, you can modify the default for the client. Mm-hmm. So that's how you do it. All right. I think we've gone through. There were quite a lot of questions in this session so far. We might have missed some. We're trying here live to juggle questions and presentation. We will go through with a fine-tooth comb afterwards, and if we didn't answer things properly, we'll definitely follow up. So just in case you feel overlooked here. So Chase, where are we at? Did you get through your bits?
Yes, I've gotten through all of my parts. I think we're finally on to the new and shiny things. If you want to tell us about that.
Yeah, and this is, yeah, just again, it's complex. There's a lot of buttons here and a lot of things that affect your invoice presentation. So reach out if you need help. I'm gonna take over by sharing my screen now.
There you go.
And we're gonna look at custom fields. So give me just a moment. Here we go. So let's see. Are we seeing my LeanLaw screen? Can you confirm?
We
Chase?
are.
Okay, great. So Chase was showing all of these options here. Now, the Map Custom Fields button here allows you to put more information on the invoice header. And I'm going to flip over to QuickBooks first before we dive into the detail here. In QuickBooks, you define custom fields over in Account and Settings, and then you go to Sales, and then Custom Fields shows up here. And you have in a standard QuickBooks account, I think the cheapest QuickBooks account doesn't have this at all. And then QuickBooks Advanced, we're going to talk about separately. But other QuickBooks accounts have custom fields here. They're text fields, and you can have up to 3 of them. And you put a name in. In this case, I have matter, or I can put in like matter ID or something. I want to show the matter ID on the invoice. And I want to show the responsible attorney name on the invoice. And you choose here whether they'll show up on the invoices or not, or whether they're just internal. So LeanLaw reads these fields. So if I refresh this page, you should see now that I have matter ID instead of matter. We read those fields from QuickBooks, and then you can map them to stuff in LeanLaw. And so when we create an invoice, we're going to put in whatever you pick over here. We're going to put into that field on the invoice. So for attorney, I might pick responsible attorney. For matter ID, I'll pick the matter ID, funnily enough. But there's lots of options in here. There's different options for client ID, matter ID, or combinations of that. You can put responsible attorney, originating attorney, opposing counsel, billing instructions, date opened, and you can also put trust balance and evergreen information in here. So this is another idea of, instead of using the trust memo field, you could just put the trust balance in a custom field, and it'll show up on the top of the invoice. And that's another way to provide trust information for clients. When I say save changes here, we should now be able to, next time I create an invoice, let's see, where do I have an invoice? Oh, right here. I'll create a draft real quick, and then I'll send that draft to QuickBooks. Oops.
Did you forget the email on that one? Ooh.
Boy. I think it's the classic. I have a test account that hasn't been correctly set up. All right, clicking around, trying to save the day.
Is this what it looks like when you fix bugs?
Okay. Yes. All right, so we managed to send that over to QuickBooks, and let's have a look at it over here. So now we have the matter ID appearing here, or the matter name, I guess, and the responsible attorney appearing here. And so when I print it, these items, these custom fields will appear very prominently at the top of the invoice. So that's an answer to Karen's question from earlier that, hey, we don't want the matter name to be in the address up here. We want it down here, and so this is how you do that. All right, so that's it really. You can play around with custom fields, start by defining them in QuickBooks in here, then map them in LeanLaw over in settings, and then create invoices to see the result. Now we have something new to announce, which is we're really excited about. It's support for QuickBooks Advanced custom fields. We haven't released this fully yet to all of you guys, but will be very soon. If you're interested in some preview of this or a beta version, please reach out and we can work with you on that. But this should be released within the next week or so, actually. So I have here a QuickBooks Advanced account. And custom fields no longer appear under accounts and settings. It's a separate thing on the lists here. And custom fields are much more powerful than just a couple of text fields that appear in invoices. And I'm not going to get into, go super deep here in terms of why you would use custom fields in QuickBooks Advanced. But it basically allows you to tag clients and revenue and expenses and everything in QuickBooks with more variety of data that you can then report on. We can see here that you can add fields that apply to customers, transactions, vendors, and different forms that they appear on. But the key thing is that they have added different data types than just text. So before we had three text fields. Now we have as many fields as we want. I think there's a upper limit, but it's pretty high. But we can also add number fields, date fields, and then a drop-down list, which allows us to specify different values for the field. And so I have defined some things here that are typical for law firms. A date field that shows when the matter was opened. The trust balance is a number field. The matter is a text field like we had before. And then two interesting one here, the practice area is a drop-down field where I have the different practice areas that I use in my little law firm here. And the attorney field is a drop-down field that shows all the attorneys that work in my firm. And so let's see how we configure that on the LeanLaw side. If we go over to LeanLaw in my LeanLaw account and go to that same place where we map the custom fields, we'll see all those fields reflected over here. But we now have more than just text fields, and you can map drop-down fields to responsible attorney, originating attorney, or practice area. And then you can map, the different values you have in QuickBooks with your attorneys in LeanLaw. And so we have all this defined here. It's mostly the same data we can map in here, but with a unique addition that we have drop-down fields, date fields, and number fields that we can use. So let's try from this account to create an invoice. I have some stuff lined up here. Create a draft invoice. We'll go to QuickBooks and look at it. Let's go through the motions. And now we have the QuickBooks Advanced custom fields filled in. I didn't have a practice area defined for this particular matter, so that appeared blank. But I had my attorney specified, and the case opened, and the matter name right here. So that's all getting filled in. And we're not going to cover that any further in this call, but then you can then do reporting based on all these dimensions when you're in QuickBooks, and this is really a powerful feature for getting a better sense of, for example, revenue by practice area inside of QuickBooks reporting. There's also another dimension to this, which is the fact that these custom fields appear in on clients. So under customer details in QuickBooks, you have customer fields as well. And so when I edit clients over in LeanLaw and a custom field is defined for that client, it will also reflect over here. So just a kind of overview of something coming. We're actually the first app that have access to custom fields this way. So we're really excited to be kind of at the end of the spear here in terms of deeper QuickBooks integration, specifically with QuickBooks Advanced. So, and we hope you guys will love it, but more to come in our announcements. And so I wasn't really paying attention to the question box here, Chase, just rambling on. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Got a couple. So Katie wants to know how we can get in on the beta use of this feature.
Just send a chat. I'd like to be part of the custom field beta, and we'll get you signed up. So
does us being the first app to add this mean that QuickBooks will actually listen to what we say, or?
Yeah, I mean, so Karen made the point early on in this meetup that we've been trying to tell QuickBooks for years that invoice presentation is not very good for law firms, and they have started listening for sure in terms of making QuickBooks work better. They've picked law as one of the first verticals that they're marketing to QuickBooks Advanced towards. And the fact that we were picked as one of the apps to work first with QuickBooks custom fields for QuickBooks Advanced shows that they're paying attention, I think, to law in general. We have a fairly long list of sort of things we'd love to see.
A Christmas wish list for Santa Claus.
Yes. And they don't move super fast, but they are definitely listening. So let us know what you would like to see in QuickBooks, and we can be part of that. As a community of people who care about QuickBooks for law, we can, with a common voice, go in and hopefully change some of this.
With pitchforks and torches.
Or lawsuits, maybe. No, just kidding.
Oh, yeah, that'll scare them. Darlene has a question about the matter descriptions max character length, and I believe QuickBooks sets that.
Yeah, so the old custom fields have a very short character limit. I actually forgot what the limit is. Is it 25 or something?
It's shorter than a tweet.
Yeah, it's like 30, around 30 characters. Sorry, I can't remember it off the top of my head. That's so you have, if you have long matter names or even attorney names or some of these fields, we will truncate them to whatever the limit is, which is about 30 characters, very limiting. That's not a limitation in the QuickBooks Advanced custom fields. So there's, if you're running into this issue, there's some hope there if you have QuickBooks Advanced, or if you want to consider upgrading to QuickBooks Advanced, that this can be addressed.
Karen, it would probably be best if you just emailed Fred with those things you'd like to see changed, because I know our team meets with QuickBooks pretty frequently.
I'll follow up there.
Yep. What about
somebody asked, what about QuickBooks Accountant? I think I've heard from QuickBooks that the QuickBooks Accountant will be by default QuickBooks Advanced feature. I don't know if that's accurate, and I don't know if that's true right now or when it will be true, but I think QuickBooks for accountants will have these features that I've just described eventually, or maybe even right now, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll check.
Does it include the feature referenced in advanced? I think I'm missing some context there, Darlene.
I think we still have a few questions ticking in. Feel free to ask. We're kind of at the end of our discussion of invoice presentation and custom fields. We have a little time left, so if there was something we missed, let us know right away and we can cover it now, or let us know later or in our chat box, and we'll cover it individually.
Or if you have
I did want to go ahead.
Any support questions, because it's 10 minutes of me not having anything better to do.
I did want to spend a few minutes here at the end with just a quick note on what's next in LeanLaw, what we're working on right now. In November here, we'll be working on, or actually we're already working on adjustments, which is a much needed feature where you can, when you edit draft invoices, you can mark down time. So for example, somebody has 8 hours on a certain task, you mark it down to 4 hours. We will record that as an adjustment and keep track of the original time. And so reporting will reflect this and can be used for as a productivity and billing metric. We currently don't have that dimension, so that currently when you write down something on an invoice, the original time entry will be written down as well. So that's a really, really big gap that we are now working on filling in. The other thing we're working on is a Microsoft 365 integration, specifically an easy way to sync up stuff from your calendar and other places in Microsoft 365, so that you can more easily track time that way. Things from that system can kind of appear as billable items in LeanLaw, sort of semi-automatically. That's another thing we're working on, and a myriad of sort of smaller things and requests from you guys. So if you are waiting for something that we promised you, the fact that I didn't mention it right now doesn't mean that we're not working on it. So we always try to listen, and so let us know what you're missing, and we'll try to get to as soon as we can. And there's a question from Ian about one of those items.
Yep.
Yes, we are working on the ability to, when you create an invoice, instead of, I can't show it here, but instead of editing a draft invoice and saving a bunch of items for later, you can instead choose which time entries you want to include on the invoice when you create the draft. So I'm trying to get that completed as well. So thanks for the reminder, Ian. So other questions, Chase, or are we ready to wrap up?
I think we're about wrapped up.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, Chase.
Thank you, Fred.
I think we know how to make invoices look awesome now. I'm hoping.
I tried.
Great. Thanks, everyone. We have a recording of this, and so you should get an email with a follow-up, and you can watch this again or send it on to people who missed it. Thank you.
See you later, everyone.